We have a lot of folks joining. It's so good. Okay, good to see you, Emily. Looking forward to it. So, hi everyone. It is now officially 3:02, so I want us to kick it off and get started. I'm very glad all of you are here today to join us for this special conversation about Black women at work. I am now going to turn it over to one of our amazing C-suite coaches, Sharon McClung, to offer some opening remarks.
Thank you, Angelina. I am very excited to be here, to be a part of C-Suite Coach. Greetings to everyone, everybody, everywhere. I contacted Angelina because of a conversation that I recently had with my coach. That's right. I am a coach and I am coached. We were catching up and checking in about all things pandemic related. And I was talking about how I wasn't really keen on leaving the remote life. And I said, I've had a revelation. I know why that is. It's because I'm actually an introvert. And my coach, who has been my coach, sometimes my mentor, always my guide, my entire adult life, responded with, "No, you're not." And I was a little surprised. I said, no, this makes sense. I know I'm not really, don't really want to go back necessarily to in-person, and why my whole life going into meetings and conferences, I've been a little nervous. Because I'm actually an introvert. I have a background as a performing artist. I've been on stage, thousands of people, but I can be in a room with all these people. But when I'm on stage, I'm actually just by myself. And when I speak, everybody is listening. And there are no surprises, right? Nothing catches me off guard because everyone has the same script. And everything has been rehearsed. So this is my stand. I was taking it. I was doubling down on this. And his response was, okay. So I knew he was totally unconvinced. And after we got off the call, I thought, why was he so unconvinced? So then I checked my email and I got my C-Suite newsletter and I saw this event. And I thought, whoops. Maybe there's another reason why I'm not so excited to go back to in-person. Maybe there's another reason why I've been so relieved to be working remotely, right? When I walk in a room, I am defined by the room that I've walked into, other people's perceptions, right? And that's not just me, that's everybody. At some point, everybody is an individual walking into and navigating a group dynamic. But some of us, women, people of color, Black women, spend a lot of extra energy navigating that dynamic, right? We come in the room and we're part of the team, but our value, traditionally, our paycheck has been less. We also come into a room to navigate assumptions about us, stereotypes, archetypes, right? We're the caretaker, the mama, or the strong Black woman and the fighter. And for the first time in my life, working remotely, when I walk into the room that I walk into, or the Zoom, as the case may be, that I walk into, it's tiny. And it has a mute button, or I can go off camera, or I can turn the camera off, or I can end the meeting for all, right? I had control over that room that I have never had before. So I'm here today to ponder the questions. When I go back to in-person, who's going to be my caretaker? Who's going to be strong for me or with me? And when we all go back, how do I find control that I had with a click in the workplace now?
Wow. Thank you so much, Sharon, for those powerful observations. I really want to thank you for taking time to share what's so heavy on all of our hearts right now. And I want to call out that this is not a new topic. How do we thrive when we're one of the only is something that we've been grappling with for a very long time. What's different is that we've had the opportunity to be at home and feel feelings of safety that we haven't in a long time in our offices. I threw in the chat an article that I wrote in the Huffington Post almost 5 years ago now about how to thrive and resilience for Black women at work. And now I want to turn it over to our esteemed panelists and our wonderful moderator today, Jacqueline Carter, who works on my team at C Suite Coach. With us today, we have both one of our coaches, Dr. Trinace Richardson, who is a nationally sought after keynote speaker, award-winning educator, author, and CEO. She has over 20 years of leadership experience in both the public and private sector, and she's a highly respected leadership researcher and practitioner. We also have with us Emily Graham. Really excited. She is my soror, as well as a Chief Equity and Impact Officer at Omnicom Group, one of the largest advertising and communication agencies in the world. And she leads the open team with over 30 dedicated DE&I professionals responsible for driving the diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy company-wide. So that being said, as coaches and the founder of a coaching business, we are heavily thinking and considering this topic regularly. And I want to make sure we have time to dive in and hear not just what's going on in the workplace, but also get the coach's perspective about how to navigate some of these topics. So that said, I'm going to kick it over to Jackie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Like Angelina said, I'm on the C-Suite Coach team. I am the Marketing and Customer Success Manager. I just want to thank Sharon for giving us those powerful words and thank Trinace and Emily for being on our panel. As Sharon stated, she left us with the questions, how do we take care of ourselves as we return to the office, and who's going to take care of us? Please feel free to drop how you're feeling, anything throughout in the chat throughout the conversation, but we're just going to dive in right now. After the coronavirus sent home millions of employees home, many Black women experienced a work-free day, free of microaggressions and macroaggressions that followed them in their predominantly white workplaces. We had the privacy to grieve the countless deaths that left the racial unrest last summer without having to pretend to be okay in front of our colleagues. So naturally, when it came time to return to home, many of us didn't want to go back. So my first question for the panelists is, how important is it for Black women to advocate for themselves and their needs in the workplace?
I'll start, and I don't know, Jacqueline, if you can hear the beeps that are happening on my end because of being a co-host. I don't know if you want to fix that, but I am so grateful to be a part of this panel and to be a network coach for C-Suite Coach. So thank you, Angelina, for this opportunity. I believe this is such an important question, and the answer, of course, is that yes, Black women should be an advocate for themselves and speak up and speak out about what their needs are as we are expected to return back to work. And I would just add to that as a coach that when you are speaking up and speaking out on behalf of yourself, I would couch that and communicate that in terms and language about your contribution to the organization and how your contribution is valued, and whatever that data you have behind it, whatever your results are that you can share. But in addition to that, talking about the fact that there's better performance there is when there's flexibility, and the idea that when your desires when your needs are addressed, that you and your colleagues become better performers. And so I think organizations love to hear how be reminded of our value added and couching our needs in this very difficult season in the space of how they benefit from us being in a better place would benefit them. So that's where I would start.
Hi, everybody. I see melanin everywhere. I'm so happy to see you, beautiful men and women and other here. Thank you for joining. I will say something about COVID and what it revealed for me, and maybe you can relate to this. It wasn't until COVID happened and we were at quarantined at home. I think my last day in the office was March 13th, 2020. But I spent about 50 to 60% of my time on the road in a suitcase, living out of a suitcase. And when I really began to sit with myself, that's when I began to heal. I began to mend, and piece by piece, I began to understand how much trauma I was enduring on a daily basis, how much stress I was facing on a daily basis. I was shouldering it all. So COVID for me gave me more boldness to check with myself about how I was really doing, sis, like me, without anyone being able to ask me every single day. Because in the office, I was a soldier, I was a leader, I was working as hard as possible, racing against what clock? And what is a clock when time stops? It's nothing. So, I feel like I had advocated for myself when it came down to my career advancement, but not to my self-care. And that was separate to me. My career moving in a upward pace was not the same as me saying I need to take a mental health day. Well, that's become commonplace since COVID. So when you say, what is the value of Black women advocating for themselves, it's worth its weight in gold. It's a muscle that if you don't use it, it softens, it starts to atrophy. If you become used to advocating for yourself and seeing that as a valuable and powerful and healthy thing, you won't sense it as complaining or being seen as difficult. You will begin to hear your voice out loud and it be music to your ears. It'll be music to somebody else's too. So I think in the fear that we have about return to work is legitimate. I understand why. I also think that we need to be more forward about those. And the people who are responsible for making that not be so have to sit with that. And don't you feel uncomfortable for the issue they need to handle, but you can certainly be a part of that solution too. So that's what I'd say, Jacqueline.
Thank you so much. We're one question in, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm already seeing some gems dropped where you guys are lighting up the chat, especially Emily saying it's worth our weight in gold, especially our peace of mind. And then to bring it back to what Trini said, Adasia put it in the chat, when your desires and your needs are addressed, you and your colleagues become better performers. And we see that. And so thank you guys for just starting off this panel. Amazing. Thank you guys for everyone else that's chatting in the chat. And so statistics continue to show that Black women, of course, need additional support in the workplace when it comes to upward mobility. What specific resources do you guys believe that Black women need to truly thrive in the workplace?
I started first, Emily. I was going to say, Emily, if you'd like to start.
Whoever wants to go first.
Okay, thank you, Trinice. I'll go. I'll start with my personal assessment of what I need to thrive in the workplace. I needed allies. And the reason I needed allies is because I had adversaries, y'all. I had them in the workplace. I needed allies and people in positions of influence who weren't threatened by my gifts. I needed people who would usher me into every room they were in, speak on behalf of me in rooms they weren't in, and ensure that anything that was being said that was untoward and frankly untrue was shot down. I benefited from executive coaches. I think C-suite coach and the Angelina and her team and Trinice and the work that y'all are doing, this is a resource. So I had executive coaches in my past. I've had peer mentors, trusted Black women. One of my BFFs also is a trusted Latino man, Justin Reyes. He's on this chat. He joined. I needed people I could call and say, am I being crazy? Or XYZ. And I needed them to tell me, you are not being crazy, or I needed them to tell me, you're tripping. So I could understand if I was being off base or not. But in order for you to have that community, which I guess that is the asset I'm talking about, is a community, in order for you to have that, you have to be willing. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to ask for help. Oh my goodness, ask for help. Us, Black women asking for help. You have to be willing to step outside and know that what comes back to you, you may not like what you hear. Also, I think when it comes down to it, you have to pay it forward. So if I'm seeking that allyship and I'm seeking that advocacy, I'm seeking that phone a friend, you have to be that too. And it's going to help you be able to be better to somebody else. So it's a very personal take, but that's what helped me quite a bit.
And Emily, I have a question just to off of piggybacking off of something that you said. You spoke about how you needed an ally to kind of check in with about things that you were saying if you were tripping or if you were feeling that way. Can you speak to how the personal journey you had to take to unlearn those behaviors? Because a lot of times when Black women step up, we feel that we're uncompromising. We feel like we're tripping, and most times that we're not. So
I think being self-aware, and COVID helped me with that a lot. You know, one of my best friends is on right now. She is on Courtney. She's joining. I know me and I know how I am. I know how I act. So I know sometimes when I am fixating, I have the tendency to fixate. I'm a perfectionist. I have a tendency to over-rotate on things. I have a tendency to maybe analyze to a degree that may not be of health. And so sometimes I need someone who has perspective on the outside looking in that can look at me knowing me well. And I've had to learn that there are times where I can be thoughtful and intuitive, and that's my gift at its best. And there are times where I can be neurotic and critical, and that is my gift at its worst. That's about know thyself, though, and to thine own self be true, right? So that's the way I kind of started dealing with it. And you know what? I didn't beat myself up when that other side of my gift starts to show itself. That just means I need better rest, probably need to sleep. I probably need to take a step away from my work. I probably need a mental break. I probably need to get perspective, and it doesn't come to me sitting in front of my screen. That's when I have to get back to myself, my meditation, my prayer, my journal, what makes me whole. And frankly, calling my parents who still don't know exactly what I even do and just having a conversation with them that takes me to a whole nother place, because they care. They absolutely care, but they don't. It gives me perspective, and I think we all need that perspective of our world. But you have to be comfortable with the good and bad and ugly of you. That's going to help you be coachable. That's going to help you grow, and that's going to help you learn to love yourself as well.
Yeah, this is so good. Emily has given such a comprehensive idea of personal experience, right? So in addition to agreeing with her and adding the word mentorship, which I think has been added to the comments, just really being invited into those rooms that she talked about. I would add to that a broader perspective about these companies and organizations, making sure that they prioritize the health and welfare of their employees. And by doing so, having educational, open dialogue conversations where, for the sake of this conversation, the Black woman is not responsible for explaining and defending and sharing, but having someone come in, like these executive coaches that we are, to really share the importance of this issue with the entire organization, with the entire team, so that it doesn't look like this is a specialized, individualized issue with a couple of people in this company or this organization. So I think really just very courageous conversations are needed. I think what happens with organizations is we other each other so much that we forget how much we have in common. And everyone during COVID has had to deal with death. Everyone in COVID has had to deal with caregiving or, loss and childcare and homeschooling or virtual schooling, no matter what color you are. And so the responsibility of voicing, yes, individually, I have a responsibility to speak up for myself and take care of myself. But in addition, The leaders of the organization have the responsibility to move the entire organization forward in this area, in this very needed area. And then I would say, lastly, we need representation on these decision making. Many companies have task force as it relates to transitioning back in. And so whether I choose, the extra of it to be the person that's, that volunteers to be on the team, to be on the work group that has a voice, or whether I speak up and say there needs to be a Black woman, a Black man, representation of non-white origin on these committees and work groups so that our voice can be heard. No, we are not monolithic in thought, but in order to have our voice heard, someone has to be in the room so that the considerations can be made for our needs.
No, we are not monolithic. Thank you so much, Trinice. And your point actually kind of goes into our next question. A recent article critiqued a lot of organizations who, after the George Floyd death, after George Floyd murder, many employees felt as though their companies made statements, but there were no actions behind this. There were no systematic things to help their employees of color, their Black women, and they did them just so that they wouldn't be in trouble. How do you feel that inauthentic efforts like this affect Black women in the workplace, and how can organizations be better?
Well, I'm going to yield a lot of this to Emily, being in that I do all of the professional development for us as well. I'll just start by saying we see right through it. Can we say it that way? We see right through it, and it ends up, honestly, it ends up being a backfire and not helping at all, because it seems so insincere that, in this political climate, we're either going to be very honest about conversations, or we're going to be the very opposite of that and present fake everything, fake news, fake, and all of that. And so it is seen as my voice is not heard. Black women need to feel not just seen, some folks have said in the chat, recognized and acknowledged, all of those things, but we need to feel valued in such a way that there is a mutual trust. And that mutual trust means trust is built over time. And so a one and done session, a statement on a website without tangible actions attached to it is really fruitless. And so I can speak for some of the organizations I've worked with, as well as individuals that I've coached, to speak up for themselves and the organizations they work for, in addition to education campaigns that are ongoing and honest town halls that are happening that are ongoing. We suggest surveying your employees to get honest feedback on what they need and what they want, anonymous surveys, of course, and what actions can be taken, and following up, communicate, and then over communicate what is being done, and then continue the surveying and assessment process to see if the changes that are being made are tangible and real and beneficial to those that are supposed to benefit from them. I have a lot more to say, but Emily, go for it first.
No, I love everything that you're saying. We ask employees, or make plans and actions based on what we think our employees want, and we don't even ask them. We don't even ask them as people what they need, let alone what they want, or we don't ask how they feel. So I'm so glad you're talking about that, Trinice, because I think that's so important. So my role at Omnicom is twofold. I have a legacy background as a communicator, so I navigate and handle how and why and where do we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and are we doing so in a way that is honest, that is resonant with people, that really matters. And so that's stakeholder engagement. So I have a diversity, equity, inclusion communications title, but then my other big job is to lead diversity, equity, inclusion across 70,000 employees and 5,000 clients and 1,500 agencies. What that means is that it's going to get wrong sometimes. a lot of times. Why? Because diversity and equity inclusion is made up of people. It is not a corporate entity or tagline. If people are racist, the organization is going to be racist. If people are not progressive, the organization is not going to be progressive. And that's very important because people want to know what their stake in it is. So since George Floyd's murder, the truth is my tolerance level for like microaggressions and bias and white privilege and all of that is just, it's low. I hear it. It's like I'm a German Shepherd. My ears just go like this. I can hear it. I can hear it when it's in your face. I can hear it when they're trying to make it a sneak diss. I can hear it. And previously, I did not know if I should say something or not, or how or why. But now I know not only must I do figure out how to approach it, but I do, because we don't do anyone a service. I'll tell you about a situation I'm dealing with right now. We've had an unfortunate incident where a client meeting happened, and some of the people involved made a comment that the client found offensive, and they don't know what they did. The client is completely offended, but nobody asked the client, how do you feel? And so they walked away thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know why they were so mad. Have y'all ever heard that before? I don't know why you're so angry. You know, like that's where they're walking around thinking. I asked, well, has anybody sat down and told them? Because as a Black woman, you described it to me and I was offended immediately. Is anybody that's not white talking to these white people about why they offended a Black person? I had to ask that question. That's uncomfortable for some people. It's not uncomfortable for me in the role that I'm in because it's my job. But I do think that, you know, Black women have had to shoulder a lot of those comments, a lot of those looks, a lot of those microaggressions. And we never really had a voice or someone who's really advocating for us. So when the company comes out waving the flag, all you can do is sit and remember your review that you had, or a meeting with your manager where all the stuff they've said about equity, inclusion, and progress is not what's happening when you're sitting face to face with her or with him. So we have an opportunity and a responsibility to close that gap. I don't think it is easy, but it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be very hard to do this. And it's going to require sacrificing your ego to better understand how you could be an affront to someone. And you may not intend it, but I don't do the good intentions thing. I believe that as an adult, your words and your actions do harm, whether you meant for them to or not. What our responsibility is to find out, how does it make us feel? What do we as a company believe in? Are we anti-racist? Are we not? Are we tolerant of an aside comment or are we not? And then that's how we begin to move forward. I don't like starting with what I'm going to say. I like saying with what I'm going to do and what we believe in. And that to me is the most important.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you so much. I actually want to ask the audience a question. I see earlier someone, Alade, said that the COVID/remote helped her start her own independent contractor company. So what's happening now is that we're seeing this phenomenon called the quote unquote Great Resignation. And studies actually show that the vast majority of the people who are resigning are Black women, and that they're wanting to quit their jobs before the end of the year. So I want to ask the audience, put in the chat, what are the top 5 reasons? The article is actually called 5 Reasons Black Women Are Ready to Quit Corporate America. Throw in the chat, what are some reasons that you feel that Black women are ready to just give up on corporate America and quit their jobs and become entrepreneurs? Let's see. And Trinice and Emily, if you guys want to chime in and give any like ideas of what you think the reasons are, please feel free. Yes, I will pop the article in the chat for you.
Yeah, so I was like, ooh, I can guess one. I can guess some. The idea of coming back to, you know, this idea of microaggressions, just this passive, supposedly nice from people who would never describe themselves as racist at all. And so it's like a nice, nasty type of thing. The fact that we don't have to deal with that at home, or less of it when we're in our own safe spaces, I think that's one reason why we want to come home and stay home, or not return. And it's really important for us to think about our self-care and our being self-aware, as Emily said, about how we're feeling and thinking internally about all of this. And I think coming back, bringing anxiety, just literally the internal feelings that come up for us feel unhealthy for us. We were at ease. We are at ease at home, and it makes a difference when we have to come back. Everything from, touching of hair and tone policing and opportunity shaming, having to represent everyone. You represent your race or your gender or both. All of those microaggressions, and then how we feel about them, the anxiety we bring, I think is a big reason.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was looking at the chat and I see Angela Harris has said, Black women are believing in themselves. They realize that with their gifts, talents, and effort, they can work for themselves. Some are taking the risk and just going forward. Mic drop. I think there were people who before COVID maybe thought that they had no other option But when you begin to realize the optionality in your life, not just about your job, but with anything, you start to move more confidently. You get a little more swagger, you get a little more inspired, and you begin to think, I don't have to. I want to or I don't want to. And you start leaning into that choice. I start to see more Black women be more afraid of being stuck, more afraid of being oppressed, more afraid of being depressed than they were to go out on their own or to quit without knowing what they were quite going to do next. I saw more Black women taking that chance. And I know everyone's not in the situation to do that, but there were people who were not in the situation to do it, and they did it anyway because it was life or death for them, literally life or death. Because death isn't always just the physical, it's your mental, it's your spiritual. And that's what going to work every day for some people became. And post-COVID, it became a little bit different. So I think that Great Resignation is a reckoning for corporate America, that you might think people will do whatever is needed because they need you. But actually, people need themselves more. So they're going to start choosing themselves and making that bet. And I think that's what is important. I see and talk to Black women all the time in my role. They reach out to me, they talk to me, we get together, and they're tired. They're still tired. They're not rested yet. And I think we need that time to heal and mend and truly figure out, what do we want? Everyone's not resigning and going to their dream job. Some people just want to escape where they are.
Yes, thank you so much. And I see a lot of comments in the chat. Seeing no pathway to progression or advancement, we're tired of settling for the status quo. Lack of diversity, unfair pay, overworked, undervalued, and limited growth. Perhaps the pandemic created a space for quiet and unrest. Although we were surrounded by death and trauma, we had time to take a deep breath and really understand how absolutely disgusting things for us have been at work and in life, and we are done for it now. So just everyone is +1ing in the chat, driving home what you guys are saying. So yes, thank you everyone for dropping everything in the chat. Keep them coming, and start thinking of your questions that you had at the end, because we are going to take a few questions. But the next question is, we do see statistics that women are continuing to advance in the workplace, but oftentimes women of color, especially Black women and Latino women, are left out of this. Why do you think that is, and how can white women be better allies in the workplace?
I see you nodding at me, Emily. So definitely the idea of allyship and mentorship, right? Bringing, and we've said it more than a couple of times, but escorting us into the room, speaking our names when we are not present in the room is really important. Being aware of our contributions, and asking questions of us, showing interest in asking those questions. I think it's really important for us to speak up for ourselves. But the way you pose the question, it is not just our work. Emily mentioned how exhausted we are. We are exhausted because the weight of the work is put on us. And, you know, the adage, we are supposed to work twice as hard to be just as good in any organization. And so when we are in these places that say that they are looking for, there's a difference between equality and equity, right? So when we are looking for equity, then we are going to do what needs to be done for individuals, for groups, for those, and it might look different. It might be different, but we can't be afraid to have a different set of resources or a different set of conversations to make sure that everyone's needs are met. So I would just say allyship, tangible allyship and mentorship, and acknowledgement in rooms that we are and are not in, and bringing us into those rooms.
I love that, Trinice. And this chat is going up. I love when we get to the question that Marsha posed, allies and advocates and champions, and we have to seek them, kind of cultivate that relationship, but we also have to be them. So here's my point of view in my career. And my strongest allies really have been white men, and my biggest adversaries have been white women. I think that as a Black woman, what we bring can disorient people. It can shake things up. Our magic is magical, and that is very hard for people to get, because they can't quite put their finger on it. You know, I also think sometimes we feel like we have to come in like a wrecking ball. We might be swinging and not realizing it because we have been so conditioned to have to do everything we can to ascend, but there might be opportunities for us to glide. And we can glide when we feel trust. You can't glide when you're not trusting. So it's easy to be kind of unsure, and frankly, we might feel strident or that we have to be hard because we have been critiqued to the nth degree. But what I say about white women is, you don't have to be my homegirl. You do not have to be my savior. You just need to see me as a person, valuable and equal and deserving. Not a threat to you, not someone's going to make you cry, not that I need to conform to you. And then once you get that, I need you to tell a friend, tell your homegirls. Don't try to make me your homegirl, tell your homegirl. Because that to me is where we start to see a lot of the shifting. I would like to see more white women advocate with each other that the Black women aren't pets. We're not threats. We're valuable equals that can be in partnership with them. And that's super important because I think corporate Karen is real. And I think she is alive and well and thriving. And I still think COVID may have amended it a bit, but I think there's some challenges. And I think that when we go, but corporate Ken is aware, is alive and well too. And I think that when we start to see people befriend us, we are skeptical as to what are your intentions and what do you plan to do with it. And we've probably seen it go both ways. What I would say to you, sister to sister, is to yourself, be true. Try your best to take off years and years of calcification of harm, and try your best to show up as yourself, the self that you and your friends and family know and love, the person that you want to be in the workplace, because I don't want you to have to switch so much. I don't want you to have to be 5 or 6 or 7 people, because if you can't be you, then and you feel like the you at work isn't good enough, you're going to start having an identity crisis. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's very important to show up authentically, and everyone's not meant to be an ally. Everyone is not meant to be an advocate, Black or white. We'll talk about that. They're not all meant to be, but you will know the ones who are. You'll understand their intentions and cultivate relationships. You don't need 20 or 50 allies and advocates, y'all. You just need like 1 or 3 good ones. And that will take you far in your career, in your life. And I think know that you are enough. That's basically what I have to say. Yeah.
I wanted to add one thing. What Emily said is so important. It made me think about when she mentioned, not everybody is an ally or has to be an ally, and they may not, look like an other, because I have had, it has been some of us sometimes that say, she's doing too much or she is too much. They look just like us. And so I would say to whether it is a white woman or someone who wants to support and be an advocate for us, to that degree that Emily was talking about our tone and our calcification, try to look at whether you are focused on the way she is speaking or what she's saying. So if there's a conditioning where it's more important how she's saying it, or, rather than what she's saying, then there might be some prejudgment and microaggression involved in that. And all of us have some predisposition to bias, and implicit or otherwise, based on our childhood background and beliefs. And so I think it's really important for us to really look for, in addition to us watching our tone as Black women, but also not policing ourselves, having that responsibility on the folks who hear us gliding or being really strong, as Emily said, to focus on what we are saying and not how we're saying it.
Yes, thank you so much, Trinice. And I love what Tiff Nikki just said in the chat. The term ally has become a badge of honor without the real requirement of taking tangible actions to use in your position of power. And I think it just ties back to what you both are saying, because if you could see everyone's room in the faces they all, when you all were speaking, understand, because we've all been here. And so, Trinice, I want to ask you a question specifically about the role coaching has played when it comes to belonging at work and advocating for yourself, from the lens of being someone that has been coached and as someone who coaches other people.
Yeah, so with belonging at work, in the spaces, we've just talked about Black women deciding to create their own work, right? And so a part of that is the coaching work that I've done and being coached. It has really, that word trust has become so important to me, because I have found in my coaching relationship, being coached as well as coaching someone, that if we are able, whomever I am working with or for, if we are able to have humane conversations about commonalities, we are able to connect quicker. Now that's, of course, there are extremes and outliers, but I have been able to find commonalities with people who seem to be the most difficult. And, all of us have had the experiences that Emily talks about, having adversaries as well as allies. I do have to speak from my own experience that I have been able to get along with people that other people cannot. And I have been able to coach people to get along with people that other people cannot. And I think it's because of this one very important factor, that when we start having conversations that have less to do with work and the work that we're doing or the work that we want to accomplish, and more to do about our personal lives, just, kids and where we live and, what we love to do and, what we dislike and where we like to go eat. And it may sound trite, but the idea of getting to know someone as a person has really opened a whole lot of doors for me, as well as for the folks that I coach. So that's one that I would give, that if we humanize each other, we can find commonalities that help us navigate the system of belonging in the workplace.
Thank you so much, Trinice. And we have a question from Claude for Emily that says, how do you assess who is your real ally when individuals promote so heavily in the social media spaces and social media is often used to judge credibility?
I mean, you want to marry or date somebody based on their social media profile only. Like, y'all, people be lying like hard, for real. You must go by people's actions, and actions are only things that you can see. or understand based on your talking to a person, interacting with them, engaging with them. I forgot which sister said it, but it is a badge of honor to be an ally. And a badge of honor means you are acting in an honorable way. It can't just be that you are typing in an honorable way. And I think that's very important. And as a PR person, I know a good PR, you can PR anything, frankly, but that is not what racial and social justice is about. It is not what diversity, equity, inclusion is about. And don't you let anyone try to play you like that. Because at the end of the day, we all know people who are misrepresenting themselves on social media, personally or professionally. Because, you know, what the point is, I think you have to do your due diligence, and I can't underscore enough, your gut matters. You should not be seeking out everybody who is online in a persona to have affinity for. They have to earn that from you. What you're giving is very precious and it's very important. So I would say use your discernment, and not that you can't be on social media and see what people are saying and be inspired, certainly, and see somebody and think it's admirable. But I really do believe the judge of character comes from being able to really be in position to be with a person, hear them, understand them in multiple scenarios. So be thoughtful about how you bring in advocates and allies into your inner life. Work and one level of work is one thing, but I think part of the challenge with advocates and allies is they really need to know you and understand you. That way they can understand your intentions. They can understand when something might come off wrong. They can get it. And you're not spending all that time kind of helping them understand who you are and what you meant. And that only comes from them really truly getting to know you. So I hope that helps. And Trinace, I want to apologize because I've been saying your name wrong. It's Trinace. Thank you. You should have been like, Emily, that is not how you say my name.
No, you are fine. Thank you. I appreciate you. And I would only add to what you have said, that gut intuition is just so important about who we connect with in our lives, and observing them in other spaces and seeing how that feels. I'll only add that there are lessons to be learned from the mistakes that we've made connecting with others previously. And so if we happen to be in the insane cycle of having the same types of people in our lives, in our spaces, really just acknowledging that. What does that look like? What is my motivation, right? Not just theirs, but what is my motivation? Am I looking for someone that has a glossy spotlight or has a very large platform, or am I looking for someone who is truly going to invest in me and the work? And I have been able to find those support circles, those sisterhood circles, the coaching that I do, as well as the coaching that I have been a part of, is really about connecting with like-minded, soul-bonded sisters who provide the support that I need to go out and be stronger in the world.
Thank you so much, Trinace. Thank you everyone else for joining. Do we have any other last minute questions in the chat that anyone else wanted to ask before we hop off? I'll give you guys a few seconds, but I'll probably go through and just read some more things that people are saying. Thank you. So true. Coaching and other healing can help with challenging and limiting beliefs from internalized white supremacy. Yes. Angelina said that is a powerful statement. We have to challenge ourselves to avoid internalized white supremacy. Okay, so we have a question. As a manager, how do you consider the needs of your staff with the design of your office, which was developed to be in person?
As a manager, how do you, is it here in the chat?
Yes.
Scroll up a little bit.
Okay, Trinace, maybe you go since you see it and it'll go ahead.
Yeah, so it's by Beth. Beth, thank you for the question. And Of course, masks are important in the season that we're in. I'm sure all of us are dealing with different variations of what the requirements are as it relates to being vaccinated versus not vaccination. And I know everybody has their own take on that, right? But when you are bringing people together that have different takes on that, I would start by surveying them, finding out what their needs are, what they're dealing with at home, whether they have children or elderly folks. So really, as a manager, find out what the needs of your folks are and what they're dealing with first. And then as you move them back into the workspace, masks, I think, have to be a minimal requirement. We have suggested and implemented at different workplaces that I consult, the partitions, just the plastic partitions, even around a cubicle, where they can hook onto the cubicle and come around, so that folks can't just walk up on your cubicle and be in immediate space. Some folks have appreciated the extra partitions when it was open space, just creating those extra partitions. And I would really just suggest, as a manager, if you have the authority and the purview to be flexible with the schedule, to have some sort of hybrid, or some days, they're coming in and some days they're not, please consider that as well.
I would add all of that. The only other thing I'd add is that we have a lot of return to work surveys and people trying to understand what employees need physically. But I would ask a couple of questions about their mental state. I would ask a couple of questions about their experiences previously in the office. It's going to get you to some of those inequities that they may have experienced if they felt culturally harmed, psychologically unsafe. So ask some of those questions in a survey, perhaps, and maybe even through qualitative interviews. So when your approach for work is not only this, the temple, the body, but it also is that mind and that heart part, because that's part of the reason a lot of Black women don't want to go back to work. And I want to make sure that managers are getting close enough to understanding that part too.
And if you're able to provide those counseling services, support group services, allowing folks to have a portion of their day more regularly free and open, they can go outside, they can go and take a break. Really considering those things are really important if they have to come in.
Definitely. And as you guys says, those are all things that we are used to having at home. We're used to being able to step away, mute ourselves. So it's great for managers to be thinking about that as we come back to the office. We have another question from Kiara. I apologize if I said your name wrong. It says, what kind of advice do you have for young professionals who are just starting off? I work in a corporate office where I'm the youngest person here, and I can count on my hand the number of people who look like me. How do you navigate making your way in a space like that?
Good child. That was me. Exactly me in my career. When I started my career 15 years ago, that was me. And frankly, if you look at my company website, it is still me. I am still the youngest and only Black person on that website 15 years later. So that goes to tell you a lot about corporate America and corporate spaces. First thing I want to let you know is not only you're going to be all right, you're going to be amazing. You are going to soar. You're going to sprint. You're going to be so incredibly good. You know why? Because now this conversation is not being in a private group chat or on the side. Companies have to acknowledge you. They have to, you are there and you're not leaving, and they get that. And I want you to take up all the space, sis. Like, take it up. And when you walk into that room, lift your head high, roll your shoulders back, feel comfortable. Nobody else looks like you, but we all look like you, and we are cheering you on from places that nobody looks like us too. Sometimes it's this community where you have to come to find that allegiance, that group. Navigating, making your way. Give yourself room to feel like some days are going to be harder than others, and don't be too down on yourself. Because there might be meetings that you might be part of that you're just like, I can't do this today. This is a lot today. There's environment happening all around you in the world where you're having to show up on camera after somebody is just murdered on television. That's different than it was when I was starting in my career. You could call in sick, you could do something different. People are expecting you to be on and on camera all the time. But I want you to take agency of your mental health and wellness. I want you to be confident in every room you walk into, and don't feel afraid to reach out to a person who doesn't look like you, who might become the only ally or advocate in the office that you see and that you have. You build relationship with, because you never know what you'll get from that. In my role, when I was at your stage and career, it was a Republican white man in his late 50s who took me under his wing and allowed me to have all the opportunity because he saw something in me that he could see in himself. We had commonality as different as we were. So don't underestimate that ability, because if you're talented and you're good and you're smart, that's black, green, yellow, purple. That's everything, because people see so much promise in you. So Trinace, I don't know if you had anything else.
Yeah, I love this question, and I love you, Kiara, already. And in addition to everything Emily has said, I just want to add and possibly reiterate, just shine. I mean, literally be a light. Don't dim your light. Be the first to speak up, be the first to ask a question, be the first to make a suggestion. Don't feel like you have to be demure and dim in order to make room for others. As Emily said, make your own space. And I would say, find your support system in sessions like this, getting a coach, but also support groups where I have them, going to my website, there, and getting coaches in the way that C-suite coach has, wherever you can find support, where you can talk about the things that all of us experience, and then go back and feel equipped and stronger to deal with the things that you deal with in those spaces. But definitely don't dim your light, and find the support that you need outside of that space, and speak up, be the first, allow your light to shine so they know you are the go-to person, and you will, I'm sure you will, as Emily said, soar brightly and quickly.
Yes, thank you guys so much. And I feel like that is the perfect question to end on, just empowering all of us to shine, don't dim your light, and essentially know that you're going to be great, and find that community that will foster everything that you have and what you need. So I just want to thank everyone for joining today. I want to thank Sharon. Thank you for giving us your wonderful opening notes. Thank you, Emily, Dr. Trinace, for your wonderful words and inspiring us all. We have chats like this every month, you guys, that are free. And we also have recorded this, so you will be able to watch it again and share it with people. It will be on our YouTube channel, and I will send out the link. I'm also going to drop the link to our next C-Suite Coach chat if you guys want to register. We're going to be talking about the Great Resignation, so how employers can be better, how you can move up in the space if you see some new jobs opening up, and how to essentially resign intentionally if that's something that you want to do. So thank you everyone all for joining. Thank you again for our panelists, and everyone have a great day. Thank you.